Okay, so here we are, 2.1. We're going to finish this section up. This will be due next week on Monday. So let's graph. Let me make that a little cleaner for you. Y equals sine x plus pi. So on number 5, y equals sine of x plus pi. It's been a long time since we've done problems. It's been like a week or more than a week. So let me remind you. So first off, you want to find the amplitude. The amplitude. So how do you find, where's the amplitude? Yeah, which there's nothing there, invisible 1, huh? Yeah, so the amplitude is 1. Remember, that's how high and low it goes. The sine graph or the cosine graph or whatever. It goes up to 1 and down to negative 1, huh? That's that number in the front. And then we find, remember what we find next? The period. And I gave you a little formula. It's 2 pi over b. Oh, this one's going to have an extra wrinkle. Yeah, okay. I didn't mean to do like a new one right away, but I guess we are. All right, this one has extra. This one's got a little extra trick to it. 2 pi over b. Now, what do I mean by the b? Let me give you the general setup at this point. The general game plan is going to be y equals a sine or cosine bx plus c. So I'm just setting that up. And then, so when I refer to b here, right here, when I say the period is 2 pi over b, what is b? B is that number next to x. B is whatever is next to x. So what's next to x here? Nothing. Invisible 1 again, huh? Because 1 times x is the same as x. So this is 2 pi over 1. That's 2 pi. Is that good to there? And now, so that's the period. There's a new thing that we didn't have in the other ones. It's called the phase shift. And the phase shift is negative c over b. I'm doing this a little different than if you click on the show me an example button, they'll call it positive c over b. I don't want to confuse you, but I think my way will be easier for you. Either way, so I never care how you do anything. But just want to give you a heads up. It'll seem different if you click on their help button. I'm doing it in a way that I think will be easier for you. So, all right, c over b. What is c? A is the number in front of the sign. B is the number next to x. And c is the other number added or subtracted after the x. So what is the c in our case? This is the a. Right in front. This is the b, whatever's multiplying x. So this is the c. The c is the pi. So when they say it's negative c over b, that's negative pi over 1. So it's negative pi. Tracking with me on that? That making sense? Now, what in the world? So it's time to graph. So what the phase shift is where the graph starts. So the phase shift is where the graph starts. So this graph is going to start back here at negative pi. So that's kind of weird, huh? It doesn't start at 0. This one's shifted off of 0. He doesn't start at the origin where they normally start. Good so far? Now, how do you know where they end? So the phase shift is where they start. They start at the phase shift. Let me give you the formula now for how to find out. In fact, let me just change the color, make it easy for you to see. Let me give you how you find out where they end. Where does a graph end? It ends at whatever the phase shift is, because that's where you start. Phase shift plus the period. The phase shift plus the period. Because remember, the period is the width of one cycle. So if you start at negative pi, so here we go. So the end is going to be negative pi. That's where it starts, right? It's the phase shift. Plus the period. And what's the period? 2 pi. So what's negative pi plus 2 pi? Just 1 pi or pi, huh? Good there? Is that making sense so far? Let me bring that down a little bit. 1 pi or pi. So that means over here, at 1 pi or positive regular pi, is where it will end. It's going to start here, end here. Let me slow down for just a minute, because I know that part's brand new. We didn't do any of that a week and a half ago when we were beginning the section. So one more time. So when they give you sine or cosine or whatever, you identify A, B, and C, and then the amplitude's just the A. The period is 2 pi over B, 2 pi in this case, because B is just 1. And the phase shift is negative C over B, which came out to be negative pi. That's where the graph starts. So it starts at the phase shift, and then the period is how long until it ends its first cycle. Remember that? That's what period is. It's the width of one cycle. So, you know, like if I said, hey, I'm going to sing a song. Yeah, how about this? You don't want me to sing a song, but I'll just pretend. I'm going to sing a song, and I'm going to start when the big hand is on the 6, and I'm going to sing for 15 seconds. Ready, go. I'm singing. I think of Elf right away. I'm singing a song. It's one of our favorite Christmas movies. Anyway, so if I said I'm going to start when the big hand's on the 6, and I'm going to sing for 15 seconds. I say minutes, 15 seconds. When am I going to end? Starts, so you guys picturing the clock back there? Where'd that pin go? There it is. So if I said, hey, I'm going to start when the second hand's on the 6, and I'm going to go for, 15 seconds, right? 6, I'm going to stop right here, huh? 15 seconds later, right? So what do you do to figure that out? Your starting point, add your period. That's my period. My period is the width of how long I sing for. Right? I'm going to sing for 15 seconds. That's pretty much that's what period is. Period means how long you're going to be doing your thing. So the period is 2 pi. So if you know where you start, add your 2 pi, that's going to be where you end, isn't it? See that idea? So the ending point is always going to be where you start, the phase shift, plus your period, how long you do your thing. So it comes out to be positive pi. All right, so the graph's going to start here at negative pi, end at positive pi. And now it's a sine graph. What does sine graph look like? That one starts here, goes high, goes to 0 in between, goes low, back to 0, huh? And there it is. And then it's just going to repeat that on and on forever in both directions. But that's all you need to identify. On the real exam, multiple choice, you just focus in on the main cycle and grab the one that has that cycle. I'll show you. You can see the practice is already available. Yeah. The amplitude, yeah, that just means how high and how low. Good question. That's just the 1 and the negative 1. That's how high and low, yeah. Thank you. Other questions on that one?
So it starts, okay, so if I get this right, it starts
at the phase shift. So whatever your phase shift is, where the graph starts. That's where the graph starts, is the phase shift. And then it ends at where you started plus the period.
Okay.
So negative pi, and the period came out to be 2 pi. So that comes out 1 pi. That's where it is. All right, let's try another one. I think it's just a lot of... Okay, let me let you try that one. So go ahead. They want you to graph it, basically. So start by finding the amplitude, period, and phase shift. Identify A, B, and C. Find the amplitude, period, and phase shift. So this is A, B, and C. All right, A, B, and C. Identify A, B, and C. Find the amplitude, period, and phase shift. So the amplitude is 2, right? Period, the formula for period is 2 pi over b. And so that's 2 pi over 4. Good so far, the b is right there. And then what do we always do with fractions like 2 pi over 4? Reduce them, huh? Reduce them. So we divide top and bottom by 2 on that one. We always reduce fractions when we can. Divide by 2 top and bottom. It's pi over 2. So there's the period, pi over 2. Now find the phase shift. Yeah, the formula for that was negative C over B. That, so that would be negative, and what's C? It's the whole negative 2 pi. So yeah, watch out. There's in the phase shift formula, there's a negative right in the front, and then notice C itself also is negative. So 2 negatives is going to become positive, huh? Over B, B is 4. So let me slow down there. Is that okay so far? Does everybody see what I did there? So the formula for phase shift is negative C over B. So there's the negative in the front. And then C is negative 2 pi, and B is the number in front of the x. It's not the x itself, it's just the number in front of the x, just the 4. So we got the double negative, this is going to be positive, huh? Everybody good there? Everybody seeing that okay? And so that's going to end up being positive, and then you reduce it, pi over 2, just like the last one, huh? You divide 2/4, divide top and bottom by 2, positive pi over 2. We good there? So we got period, amplitude, period, and phase shift. So we're ready to go to the graph. All right, see, so look back at the last example about how you find the start. So first thing you got to do is find the start and the end. So find the start and the end. So where's the graph start? The start is always the, not the period, what am I doing? It's the phase shift, yeah. The start is always the phase shift. So it starts at the phase shift. That's what the phase shift is, by the way. It's the shift of the graph. So that tells you the starting point. Now this one is positive. In the end, it came out positive, regular pi over 2, huh? The last one, the phase shift was negative pi, so it went back pi, right? It started at negative pi. This one is positive pi over 2, so that means it's going to go forward pi over 2. So there's where it's going to start to the right, huh? Because it's positive, not negative. We good there? It's going to start there. Now, where's it going to end? How'd we figure out the ending point last time? Phase shift plus period. Right? Because where you start plus how long you do your thing, like how long I sung my song, right? That tells you where you're going to end. So they're telling us it's going to start. So the end, it's going to end at wherever it starts, at the start plus the period. Because the period is how long you do your thing. How long it does one cycle. So it starts at pi over 2. The period is also pi over 2. Pi over 2 plus pi over 2? Yeah, because it's 1 pi over 2 and 1 pi over 2. It's 2 pi over 2, which is just pi because the 2's cancel, huh? Is that good to there? So I'm glad to have like some of that fraction stuff. If it's just been a while and you're a little rusty, come see me, come see Wendy. But don't let that stuff be unsure. So that's what I mean by getting the help you need. Anything, when I was taking math classes, anything I didn't understand, and there was a lot I didn't understand. I understood about half the time at best. Really, I didn't always understand what was going on in class. Half the time I was like, I don't know what that teacher's doing, but I'm just going to copy this stuff down and get help later. Right? So if some of this fraction stuff and different stuff is kind of strange, you're just rusty, on some of that stuff from your algebra days, come see me, come see Wendy, watch the YouTubes over and over again, go to tutoring, somehow learn it. Don't just let it be. It won't be. It'll cause you trouble. So make sure you get it down. So pi is where it's going to end. So it's going to end here at pi. It doesn't really, you might wonder, well, how do I know how far? Whatever. Do whatever you want. It doesn't really matter. You know, if you want to move it further, whatever. Technically it's not, but who cares? Whatever. It doesn't really matter. You just need to get enough of a picture to grab the multiple choice answer on the real exam. So don't sweat a lot of where you actually show it spatially. Just do whatever feels good there. Pi. Great. And that's further than half a pi, though. This is half a pi. This is a whole pi. So technically, these gaps are the same, but whatever. All right, so I'm going to graph it now. So it's going to start here, end here. And what is sine? It's a sine graph. They're going to go to cosine in a minute. Remember the difference in well, let me not bother you with that right now. So sine starts at 0, goes high, goes low, goes back to 0. Right? So he'll start, go high in the middle, back to 0, and then boom. And how high is he going? And how low is he going? 2 and negative 2, because that's the amplitude. So that's what he's going to do, and he's just going to repeat that forever, right and left on that. Is that good? Now, I'll show you. Remember how you put it in on Math Excel? Let me show you real quick. But it doesn't matter so much. This is all that matters, because on the exam, it'll be multiple choice. And she'll just be looking for this one cycle, the one that matches right there, and you'll just grab it. You can take a look even now at the practice exam. It's already online and available. So we good there? Questions I can answer on that? Making sense? So here. All right, let's try that. Okay, go through the whole thing again. So I want to find amplitude, period, phase shift, and then the start and the end, and graph the thing. So amplitude, period. So phase shift is also horizontal shift. That's what it is. It's a sideways shift. So I'll give you. Are you doing okay? So the amplitude. Oh, by the way, we don't put the amplitude. They want the positive number only for whatever. It's kind of a dumb thing, but they just want 4. They don't want negative 4. The period, 2 pi over b. The a, the b is 2. The a is negative 4. The b is 2. The c is the 2 pi, huh? A, b, and c. So the period's 2 pi over b. 2 pi over 2, which is just pi. That good? And the phase shift, negative c over b. So negative c, which is 2 pi over b, which is 2. Those cancel. Negative pi. Good so far with all that stuff? All right, so where does the graph start? Well, that's the phase shift. That's the horizontal shift. That's where it shifts horizontally, sideways, right? So it's going to start at negative pi. Where is it going to end? The end of the graph is always wherever it starts plus how wide the cycle is, right? Where it starts plus how long it goes for, which is called the period. The period is how long one cycle goes for, how long it takes to go up and down and back to 0. So that where it starts plus the period. You can put all this, I'm assuming, on your 3x5. You'll want to put this on your 3x5 card for the next exam in a couple weeks. So it starts here at negative pi, plus the period is pi. Oh, that's just 0, huh? This one's going to end at 0. Did you get that okay, that information? Okay. So we'll go to our graph. Let's put it on there. Where does it start? It starts at negative pi. It ends at 0. So it starts here, ends at 0. Now, everybody good to there? Questions I can answer so far on any of that? Just making sense? Now, normally sine goes high to 0. Halfway it goes back to 0, huh? Then low and back to 0. Normally. But what is the fact that there's a negative there on the amplitude going to do? Flip it upside down. So it'll actually go down first, then up, instead of up first and then. That's all that does. It just flips it upside down. So this graph will go down first, then up because of the negative sign.
Make sure you check the box.
Oh, is there a vertical? Okay, yeah. So then this is up at 4, right? Because the amplitude's 4, and down at -4. Yeah, is there some kind of box, vertical, flip, or what?
Vertical flip.
Say flip? Okay, yeah. So when you're doing the graphing thing, there's a little box which says vertical flip.
Put in a negative versus amplitude says.
It won't let you, yeah. Yeah, so yeah, everybody here, thanks Chanel. Everybody hear what she said. That's why I like people moving ahead in the homework. It helps us all. Really, seriously, that's why I always appreciate that. The amplitude, they don't let you put in negative, which is all kind of dumb to me, I think, but whatever. It's their picky little thing. They don't let you put in negative for the amplitude. So the way you do the thing is there's a little box that you have to check that says vertical flip or something.
Vertical axis flip.
Vertical axis flip. That's so...
It's in that box that pops up.
Yeah, in that little box. Vertical axis flip. That's what makes it turn upside down. That's how you do the negative part of the -4, is you have to check that special box. Now, in the test, it's multiple choice. You won't be making boxes. You'll just see A, B, C, D. There'll be 4 graphs. You'll pick the one that does this. And you can see that already. The practice exam number 2 is out there. You can see what I mean if you want to look at that ahead of time. Make sense on that? That okay? And this graph just continues to do that forever to the right and the left. All right. Okay, so the amplitude, we just say 3, even though there's a -3. Huh? They just want the positive. That's A. Now the B is the 2 pi, and the C is the 4 pi. So the period 2 pi over B, that's the formula. So 2 pi over 2 pi. So it's just 1, huh? And then the phase shift, -C over B. So -C, 4 pi over B, 2 pi. So that's just -2, huh? We good there? Pi's cancel. 4 divided by 2 is just 2. So it's -2 on that. Okay, so then that's where the graph starts. It starts at -2. And then you need to find out where the graph's going to end, where it ends. And that's always where it starts plus the period, because the period's how long the cycle is. So where it starts plus how long the song goes for, then you know where it ends. So it starts at -2, and the period is just 1, so that's just -1. It's kind of weird. So we good there? So now we can go to the graph. Let me move that over a little bit. It's all on the negative side, huh? So I'll just put it there. Okay. And then, so it starts at -2. So I'll just put this back here. And it ends at -1. So the graph's going to go between -2 and -1. Is that making sense? You can even space those out more if you want. Maybe I will. You don't have to, whatever. But if it helps you to see it, whatever works for you. I'll put the -2 way back here, and -1 is halfway there. Okay, anyway, so it's going to start here at -2 and end here at -1. And then it's a sine graph. So what is it going to do in between there? It's going to go high, 0, low, 0. Is it going to go up first or down first?
Down.
Yeah, because of the negative, it's actually going to go down first, then up. But it'll do its whole cycle, right? Down 0, up 0, between -2 and -1. And how high is that? How low? Well, it's going up to 3 and down to -3 because the amplitude's 3. There we go. And it'll just repeat that again and again. So you'll actually, if it helps, let me draw another one. It'll do another cycle by the time it gets to 0. It'll actually go low and high again, and then low and then high again. And, it just keeps doing that forever. We just happen to do this particular cycle between -2 and -1, but they go forever, as you know, right and left. Is that good? Is that okay on that? Questions I can answer? Hardly different. Well, this won't be bad at all. We've done the worst of it. So -8 cosine x. So y equals -8 cosine x. Okay. So we're graphing now. This was a cosine instead of sine. The only difference with cosine is, and I think you might already know. So sine starts at 0, goes high, goes low, goes back to 0. Cosine starts high, goes low, finishes high. It's like a U shape. So once you find the start and the end and everything, you put a U shape in for cosine. For sine, you do the start at 0, go high, go low, back to 0. That's it. Everything else is the same. All the rest of the work, 90% of the work's the same. Amplitude, period, phase shift, ABC, all that's identical. The only difference is when you're all ready to put the thing in the zone, when you've got the box you want to stick it in, you put in a U shape instead of a sine graph. That's it. Because cosine and sine are the same thing. They're just a little shift of each. Notice they're just a shift of each other, aren't they? Cosine just starts high, finishes high. He's just been shifted. And remember, we learned that, huh? Remember what co means? 90-degree shift, complementary angles, 90-degree shift. Cosine is a 90-degree shift on the sine. So it's the same thing. It's just shifted. Okay. So let me go through the details with you. So we identify A, B, and C. So what's A on this one? A is the -8 there. Right? What's the B? B is the number next to the X, which is nothing. So it's 1, really. So B is 1. And C is the number added, which must be 0. We good so far? Yeah, so if there's no number added off to the right, it's the same thing as adding 0, isn't it? So you can just imagine a plus 0. That doesn't change anything. And the B, the number right next to X, that's 1, because 1 times X doesn't change anything, huh? So they're both understood. All right, so what's the amplitude? Just 8, huh? We don't say the negative, right? And the period, 2 pi over b. So 2 pi over 1, just going to be 2 pi. The b is just the 1 there. And the phase shift is negative c over b. Yeah, it's weird. It's 0, huh? So C is 0, B is 1, so that's just 0, huh? Is 0 over anything 0? Even negative is still just 0. Good, okay, so now we're ready to do the graph. And where do we start? Always at the phase shift 0, huh? You always start at the phase shift. And where do we end? How do we... Oops, kind of bumped that. How do we find our ending place? It ends at the start plus the period, right? So where you start plus your period. So where do we start? We start at 0. What's the period? Period's just 2 pi, so that's just going to be 2 pi, huh? 0 plus 2 pi. So it starts at 0, ends at 2 pi. We good there? So start at 0, end at 2 pi. Boom, boom. Okay, and so what happens in between there? Now, so everybody good to hear? This is good so far? ABC, start and end? So now, in this box between 0 and 2 pi, I'm going to put a graph. Now, if I was going to put sine, I'm not. I would go high, low, boom. But this one's not sine, huh? This one's cosine. So instead, what am I going to do? I'm going to do a cosine. Now, cosine, let me do it wrong at first. It's actually negative, huh? So it's going to be upside down. But let me do it wrong at first. Cosine normally starts high. This one's actually going to start low. Starts high, finishes high. Normally, if it was a normal cosine, if that was plus 8 or regular 8, it would start high, go low, come back high. That'd be normal cosine. Ours, though, right, starts high, ends high. Ours is an upside down cosine, isn't it? So instead of starting high, ending high, it's going to, let me get this out of the way, start low, end low, isn't it? So it's going to start low, end low. So it's going to go high in between. My drawing is terrible, sorry. But you get the idea. There's our graph. Does that make sense? So that's all you got to do at the end is just stick a U. That's an upside down U shape because the negative up here makes it upside down. So the cosine's a U shape, but negative upside down U shape, meaning starts low. At the start it's low. At the end it's low. Unlike sine starts at 0, goes high, goes low, goes back to 0, right? Sine starts and ends at 0. Cosine starts and ends high, or if he's upside down, low, upside down U shape. Question?
So the U just has to be like in the middle of them. It doesn't have to
Right, yeah. These are just x-axis marks. Yes.
There's like indicators.
They're indicators. Yeah, well said. That's just where. But yeah, he'll be low. And how low? What is he, 8? Yeah, so he'll be down at -8, and this is up at +8 because that's amplitude, huh? Yeah, right. Yeah, he doesn't actually touch these dots. The sine would, but the cosine doesn't start in the middle or end in the middle. He starts high and ends high, or if he's upside down, starts low and ends low.
Can you do it on Math Excel?
Yeah. Does it seem tricky? Is that good before I shift off this? So really, it's cosine is all the same stuff we did for sine. It's just in the end, you either put a U or an upside down U between the start and the end. Everything else is the same for sine and cosine. Okay, there you go. Try that one. Same kind of thing. Find the amplitude, period, phase shift. Can you read that? That green color's not the best. It's a -1/4 there. So find the amplitude, period, phase shift. Identify ABC. All that kind of stuff. All right, so A is -1/4. B is the power of 3. What's C?
0.
Just 0, huh? There's just like +0 out here. That's C. Good there. A, B, and C. And then go through the amplitude is just going to be the 1/4. You don't do the negative, huh? So that's the amplitude. Period. 2 pi over B. 2 pi over, oh yeah, that's a little weird. Let me help you with that. 2 pi over 3. Good so far? It's kind of weird looking, huh? What do we deal with, how do we deal with it when we have a fraction on the bottom? You flip it, because dividing is upside down multiplying, remember that? So to divide by pi over 3 is the same thing as to multiply by 3 over pi, huh? Dividing is upside down multiplying, right? So you just do that. What's that, Kevin? Yeah, exactly. Good job. Yeah, and then anytime like you're interacting with a fraction, a whole number with a fraction, just put it over 1, and then so it looks like a fraction, makes it easier. And then yeah, those can cross cancel, huh? Diagonally cancel. So 2 times 3 is 6. Period is 6. Good there. And the phase shift, it's just gonna be 0, huh? Because C is 0 minus C over B. That's a funny looking B there. And C is 0, right there. So 0 over whatever, who cares? 0 over anything is just 0, isn't it? All right, so we get the amplitude, period, phase shift. Where does it start? It starts at the phase shift. Right, so if you notice if there's no number added or subtracted, then it'll start at 0, won't it? The phase shift will always be 0 and it'll start at 0. So you start at 0 and then find out where it's going to end. It always ends at the start plus the period. It starts at 0 and the period is 6. So it's going to end at 6. Good to there so far? That making sense? So let's draw it. So we start at 0, end at 6. Start at 0, end at 6. Okay, so now what does it do between 0 and 6? Well, it's a cosine graph, isn't it? If it was sine, I would start in the middle, go high, go low, go back to the middle for sine. But for cosine, he's a U-shape. He starts high, ends high, but again, we have a negative, don't we? So it's upside down. So instead of starting high, ending high, it's going to start low, end low. Go high in the middle. It's an upside down U. My drawing is terrible. And this is up at 1/4, down at -1/4, because that's the amplitude. Done. Is that okay? So because of the negative, it's an upside down U. Starts low, ends low. Normally cosine starts high, ends high. It's a U, but negative upside down U, starts low, ends low. And that's it. If it was sine, I would start in the middle, huh? Mm-hmm. Go high, go low, go back to the middle. Or upside down sine, go down first. Getting the hang of it? Mm-hmm. Making sense? The main bit of the work is the amplitude, period, phase shift. The other part's not so bad, right? We good? 20. Okay, try that one, same thing. This one's going to have a phase shift, right? So we're back to phase shifting for cosine. This will be the first phase shift with cosine. A, B, and C there. So A is 3, B is also 3, C is pi. Good there? So amplitude is 3. Period. 2 pi over B. 2 pi, oh, that's going to be a little ugly, huh? 2 pi over 3. Okay, and then the phase shift, negative C over B. So negative, what is C? Pi over B, 3. Okay, good so far. So that's where we're going to start. And then we got to find where the graph ends. It's whatever the start is plus the period, right? So where does it start? It starts at minus pi over 3 plus the period. Am I racing ahead yet? This is going to be 1 pi over 3 because it's negative 1 plus 2. It's positive 1 pi over 3, or just pi over 3. You don't need that 1. It's pi over 3. Okay, so let's go to the graph then. So the graph is going to start. I'm not giving enough room here. Well, okay. It's gonna. This is bugging me. Move this over here. Start. Okay, so it's going to start at negative pi over 3 and end at positive or regular pi over 3. We good there so far? My spacing doesn't look quite even. Whatever. There we go. Okay. So, all right. So we got the start. We got the end. Like that. Okay. Now, in between the start and the end, what kind of graph are we going to put in? Yeah, it's a cosine graph, which is always a U shape. Is it U shape up or U shape down? Because that's a positive 3. It's up. So it'll start high, go down in the middle, come back high. Starts and ends high, huh? So it'll go like this. Like that. And how high? 3. So this goes up to 3, down to negative 3. And there we go. Is this getting more comfortable? It's easy. We're going to do one more thing. We're going to move them up and down now. And that's the last thing. Questions on this one? Okay, they want me to graph this one. That minus 9 is not in the parentheses. So in other words, let me give you a general game plan which will help you identify everything. Now we're going to have y equals a sine bx plus c in parentheses plus d outside the parentheses. That's what that minus 9 is. He's the d. Why? Because he's not in parentheses. Right? You could put parentheses right here. You don't have to, but that's where they really are. Now, that sounds weird the way I said that. Why? Like, why is that where they really are? Well, if there's no parentheses showing, the only thing that's plugged into the sine function is the immediate thing afterwards. So in other words, it's the same as if you had parentheses around that x. It's the same. That wouldn't change anything. It would be different to put the parentheses all the way over here. That's not right. When they write that minus 9 out there like that off to the right, not in parentheses, they're saying that minus 9 is outside of the plug-in. Remember, sine, cosine, tangent, all these trig functions, they're toasters. Remember me talking about that again? That you plug things into. So you always want to be clear what's being plugged into the toaster and what's outside the toaster just sitting on the counter next to it. This is if they don't show any parentheses at all, then that means only the immediate thing right next to the sine, cosine, tangent, whatever, is the plug-in. The other stuff is outside of the plug-in, the minus 9. Does that make sense there? If they wanted to put it in there, they would have to put parentheses, then the whole thing would be, and we did a few like that earlier today, right? So I'm helping you identify that minus 9 is outside, it's the D. So what's the A then? What's the A on this problem? Well, what's the A, B, and C? What's the A? 1, there's nothing in front. What's the B? 1. What's the C?
0.
Yeah, what number? This is like the parentheses right here. Yeah, C is 0 because there's no number added or just like plus 0 in those parentheses. Is everybody okay with that? A and B are 1. C is plus 0 because maybe if it helps, I could write plus 0 in there. Plus 0. And then the, what was it, minus 9, that's your D. So the D is, again, outside of the plug-in. Which means what? The D is a vertical shift. So what D is, D negative 9 means move the center line of the graph down 9. It's a vertical shift. I'll show you. So let's find the amplitude period phase shift. So what's the amplitude?
1.
1, that's just the A, huh? Period 2 pi over B. B is 1, so it's just 2 pi. Phase shift, negative C over B. It's just going to be 0 again, huh? Negative 0 over whatever B is. B is 1, so that's just 0. So that's where the graph is going to start, at 0. And where is the graph? Where does it end? Whatever the start is, plus the period. That's going to be 0 plus 2 pi. So it's going to end at 2 pi. All right, let's go to the graph. So this graph starts at 0, ends at 2 pi. I probably need a little more room. Let me do a better job on that.
So did we just call that last part the vertical shift? Because we have the phase shift and then
Right, yeah.
Vertical shift, and that would be
Yeah.
9.
That's exactly what it is. Vertical shift. So start at 0, end at 2 pi. We good so far? Am I racing ahead of you? You okay with all this? So everything's normal, except we're going to do a down move of 9. Let me show you that now. Are you ready? Caught up with all that? So we're starting at 0, ending at 2 pi. It's just a normal one, except this minus 9. What's that going to do? Well, what that does is that moves the midline. I called it the center line, midline, whatever. The line that goes through the middle, which normally is the x-axis, right? This is normally the middle. Move that to negative 9. So here's the best way to do that. Just put a dotted line down at negative 9. That's the new middle. That's like the new x-axis, so to speak. Maybe that's a better way to say it. That's the new axis. Down 9, because that's what that minus 9 does. It moves the whole, it's like moving the whole axis down 9. And now, just pretend this is your x-axis. We're going to start at 0, end at 2 pi. This is a sine graph. What does sine do? He starts on whatever the midline is, ends at the middle. In between, he goes high back to 0, low back to 0. That's what sine does, huh? If this was cosine, I would start high, end high, around the midline. But this is still the midline. Does that make sense? That the minus 9 is the middle. That's what that does. That's the new middle. Well, how high does it go? Like, how high up and how far down? Well, the amplitude is 1. That means it goes above its middle by 1 and below its middle down 1. Is that making sense? It goes up plus 1. So that'd be the negative 8 and down 1 to negative 10. And we're done. How are we doing? Is that making good sense for you? So basically it moves the midline. So you want to create a new dotted axis line at whatever the D is. So whatever D is, that's your new dotted axis line. Down at minus 9. It goes 1 above it and 1 below it for that dotted line. Questions I can answer? Good. We'll try a little over 10 minutes. So minus 6 cosine 2 pi x. What was it? Minus 6 cosine 2 pi x plus 5. Okay, let's go through this one. Now, let's start by identifying A, B, and C. So everybody got that copied down? Minus 6 cosine 2 pi x plus 5. So the A is the minus 6. The B, what's the B? The 2 pi, right? B is the 2 pi. Now, that plus 5, here's what you want to be crystal clear on. is that plus 5 in the parentheses, in the toaster, or on the counter next to it? Yeah, that's not in the parentheses, right? If they don't, you think, well, what parentheses? Exactly. If they don't show parentheses, then only the stuff immediately after the sine, cosine, tangent, whatever, is plug-in. Everything else is after that. So that 5 is actually D, isn't it? So to be more clear, you could rewrite it for extra clarity like this. 2 pi x plus 0. That's the B, that's the C, and the 5 is outside that. You don't have to do that, but that's what it really means, huh? Only the thing right after the sine or cosine is the plug-in. So the C must be 0. There's no number added or subtracted as a plug-in. The 5 is not a plug-in. It's after the fact. It's a vertical shift, isn't it? So yeah, so on the Math Excel homework, boy, I'm just scribbling here. They have you on Math Excel, they call that a vertical shift. They have a little box and they have you put in vertical shift 5. That's what they do. On the test, exam 2, we take it a couple weeks, multiple choice, so you won't care about all that stuff. All right, can we do this one? Let's crank it through. So we need amplitude, period, phase shift. Amplitude 6. Period is 2 pi over b. 2 pi over 2 pi, 1. Right, because the b right here. The phase shift is going to be 0. Whenever that c is 0, it's just 0. Negative c over b. Negative 0 over 2 pi, 0. All right, so it just starts at 0. Okay, but the vertical, well, I've already written it. The D is the vertical shift plus 5, huh? All right, so we go to our graph, draw our axis system. And it's going to, first thing you want to do when they have a vertical shift, do that right away. Up 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. At 5, and just put a new x-axis for yourself. Up at 5. That means the midline. And remember, that's the midline. The graph will go above that and below that. That's the new middle. Right? That's not the top. That's the new middle. That's the new midline. That's the new center line. It's like the x-axis was, right? Normally the graphs go above and below the x-axis, both sine and cosine. Same thing for this dotted line. The real graph's going to go above it and below it. It's the middle, right? It's the new middle. Okay, so where do we start? We start at 0 because that's the phase shift. We end at whatever the start is plus the period. So that'd be 0 plus what's the period? 1. So that's easy. Ends at 1. So we start at 0, end at 1, huh? Start at 0, end at 1. We good? Start at 0. What's that?
The amplitude would be the negative.
Yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there. Everybody good so far? So we're going to start. So this is horizontal talk right now. Horizontally, we start at 0, end at 1. Sideways, start at 0, end at 1. Good. Now, it might help you to do the box. Let's make a whole box. Yeah. Chanel's point is a good one. The amplitude's negative 6. Now, what does that mean? That means the graph is going to rise and fall above its middle by 6, huh? So it's going to go 6 above its middle. So that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That'd be up at 11, huh? It goes up 6. 5 plus 6 is 11. And it's going to go down 6. What is 5 down 6? Negative 1. See how it's going to go up 6 and down 6 from its middle, from the 5? Everybody see that? 5's the new middle. It's going to go 6 above that and 6 below that. So maybe it'll help you to just put in the top and put in the bottom as well. I think that's helpful. So you got the middle, the top, and the bottom. So we got a box in which we're going to stick our graph. Does everybody see that? And do the right edge, maybe. Maybe I'm going too much here. I don't know. You know, if you want the whole box, there you go. Let me get rid of this other stuff. There it is. There's the exact box in which I'm going to stick my graph, right? Horizontally, it starts at end 0 and 1. Vertically, the middle's 5. It goes 6 above it and 6 below it. So that's 11, negative 1. So I make a box that covers that. It's got top, middle, bottom, left, and right. So now let's stick the graph in there. What kind of graph am I going to put in there? Cosine. What does cosine look like? He's a U shape. Starts high inside, but this one's an upside down U shape. So it'll start at the lower left, end at the lower right. In between, it'll hit the top. The best my artistic skills can do. There we go. Does that make sense? There's the graph. So see how I made a whole box out of it, right? The vertical shift of 5, that's the new middle. And the amplitude, 6, goes 6 above that, 6 below that. So 5, add 6 is 11, subtract 6 is -1. I put the top, middle, and bottom as dotted lines. The left and the right start and end are 0 and 1. Put those in. Got a box, and it's upside down U shape in that box. All right, we got 5 minutes for the back. So we have a little bit of time. I probably have more of these on YouTube. This is number 18. Basically, we're going to do backwards here. They're giving me the picture, the graph, and they want me to write the equation. They want me to work it backwards. Like, what equation is that? What equation produces that? Yeah. First off, is it a sine or a cosine? Yeah, it's a sine. How do we know? Because it starts at 0 and it ends at 0. You see that? Technically, you could write it sine or cosine with phase shifts and everything. But easiest, sine. Let's just go with the easiest thing possible. Easy, it starts and it ends at 0. Notice it doesn't start and end like a U. It doesn't start high, end high. Or start low, end low. That would be cosine. It starts in the middle, ends in the middle. Let's just focus on this one cycle here and forget about everything else. Just hone in on that one cycle. Starts at 0, ends at 0, so that's sine. So I'm thinking, okay, so it's A sine bx plus c plus d. The d, can you see the d is just 0? There's no d, because the midline is just the x-axis. So the d is 0. What's the A? What's the amplitude? 2, good, because it's going 2 above, 2 below, isn't it? Oh, and it's going down first. Good job. So the A must be -2. Everybody good so far? And the D out there is 0, or you can just skip it. Good so far? Just trying to pick off the information. So right, because this normally sine goes up first, right? Goes up and then down. But this one goes down first, so it's -2 sine. Good. Now, how do we find the bx plus c? Well, first off, is there a phase shift? Has it been shifted? No, it starts right. This isn't shifted, so that means the C is 0. Remember, the C involves the phase shift? So if there's no shift there, the C is just 0.
The period would be
So now we're down to this. Now we got to find B. Yeah, how do we find B? Well, we look at the, remember the formula for that? Period is 2 pi over B. Period is 2 pi over B. Okay, what is the period of this thing? What does period mean? Width of one cycle. That's what period is. You want to be really clear on that. Period is the width of one cycle. We'll be talking about that all semester. So what is the period of this? How wide for one cycle? Pi. Right? This the red here, this is one cycle. Isn't it? Right? Goes low, goes high. That's one cycle. That goes from where? From 0 to pi. Doesn't it? So the width of that is pi. So what does that mean? That means this period is pi. Everybody see that? The period is pi. And pi, the period, is equal to 2 pi over b. Solve for b. How do you solve that for b? Put this over 1, diagonal, diagonal. Pi times b, remember cross multiply, is 2 pi. You guys okay there? Whenever you have a whole number interacting with the fraction, put it over 1, diagonal, diagonal. So pi times b is 1 times 2 pi. Solve for b. Divide by pi. b is 1 times 2. 2. b is 2. So our equation is -2 sine 2x, because the b is 2. There it is. That's the equation that produces that graph. Sorry, I wish we had more time on that. There's more on YouTube.